Do you think the announcement of the GB500 will curtail the sales of the GB350? Right, hello everybody, welcome back to the Wednesday Bike Club. Yes, I'm still on the Norton. It feels like I've had this for like a month, but only for a couple of days. But having this bike made me think, and it sort of refers back to when I did the episode with the Norton about is there anybody that's going to make bikes like this again? Is there anybody that's going to have the courage? Firstly, isn't it? I suppose secondly, the money. You always think the idea comes first and then people worry about the money afterwards, don't they? That's where it goes a bit wrong sometimes. Because, to produce a bike like this now, it would cost a huge amount of money. And unless which I suppose a little bit was like this, people, you buy in the parts, didn't you? Buy in the suspension, you buy in the brakes and all the rest of it. But it's the idea, isn't it? And I think the problem is now, is that to produce things like this, and when we think of some of those fantastic bikes, which are, I suppose we would call them boutique, wouldn't we, a little bit now? They're made in very small numbers, but the actual buying price is huge, isn't it? Because you can't, they're almost like making one-offs for people, aren't they? And we know that's incredibly expensive. And it makes you think possibly that all motorbikes eventually, and I'm going to bring on to another point, all bikes eventually may end up looking the same, won't they? Possibly, at the end of the day, because it's a bit like electric. It's a bit like cars, isn't it? We're starting to talk electric. When you think of cars, I remember going back to the days of the Sierra, the jelly mold. We used to call it the jelly mold, didn't we? And everybody thought, what's that horrible thing, a jelly mold. But everybody warmed to it in the end. And then it was all to do with aerodynamics, I suppose, a little bit. And all cars started slowly to morph into the same thing. It's so difficult now, isn't it, to distinguish different cars. You're going, what is that? What is that? We used to be able to distinguish instantly what make it was and what the model was, and now it's harder and harder because you've got to go and look at the badge, and you think that's really sad, isn't it? And do you think possibly we could go that way with motorbikes? Because I'm going to look at hopefully going to look at the always Norton at the moment, the Norton Atlas, and they've had that. I suppose they have that problem. You're going into a market like the adventure bike market, where it's difficult to do something new, isn't it? Because it's going to look it's like building a 4x4. It's going to look sort of boxy and whatever. Adventure bike, it's going to look like an adventure bike, isn't it? And I think going into that market now, it's very difficult to stand out from the crowd, and it's because of the way that things are designed and the safety features and all the rest of it. You really need water cooling these days. If you're not water cooling, you're not future proofing your bike in terms of its emissions. The fuel injection, and we know the problems that we get with all those modern sort of safety features, emission features with bikes now. The iffy sort of throttles, don't we, and fly by wire and all the rest of it. And it's like we've gone backwards a little bit, isn't it? I know you have to sort of go. I was on my photography channel. People out subscribe, go and watch that, The Candid Photographer. When digital came along, we had to go backwards to go forwards, and by that I mean before it was actually the engineering and the design and the electronics and all the rest of it were good enough. You found that film cameras were far better. The last of the film cameras were so highly developed, they were way better than the early digital cameras. And do you think we're sort of, it's a bit like that, isn't it? We're sort of the high tech emissions controls and all the rest of it. We're still behind the curve with that. We're having to sort of manage that a little bit, aren't we? We're always a little bit disappointed in some of the, the throttles and how it works, and it's dependent on being able to plug it into computers to make it right, and all the rest of it. When you think about the carburetors, you remember that Bonneville, my old Bonneville that I rode the other day, which got sold, by the way, straight away. It got sold on a Saturday. So many people phoned Dave after that episode. It's really funny. That carburetor, and a few people mentioned that, a well-tuned carburetor has beautiful throttle response, and it just rides like a dream. And I think we've been down this electronics thing for so long, we forget how good the end of an era was in, fueling and carburetors and all the rest of it compared to now. And we're slightly accepting this odd sort of riding, not style, but the sort of the gremlins we sort of prepared to put up with, aren't we? It's a funny world, isn't it, the motorbike? It's, you'd think by now we'd have things that everything would be perfect in terms of reliability and all the rest of it, and we've gone an odd way. We've had to go backwards to go forwards, and I think because the governments and the powers that be put more and more tighter controls in it, we're not catching up. We're always backwards. We're always in that backwards state, really. And I'm chopping all over the place with this episode, aren't I? Really, I only thought about doing it at the last minute. But it's an odd one, isn't it? We're not giving ourselves time for each like emissions control and thing to bed in and get it spot on. We're having to play catch up all the time, and that doesn't really. If you do it long enough, you accept it. It becomes acceptable. It's like fuel prices, isn't it? We're so accepting of fuel prices now. Diesel's like 190 a litre, for goodness sake, and petrol's about 160. Go back a few years when I remember probably quite a few years when there was a petrol spike. There was riots in the streets. Like, my God. Now we just accept it because it goes on for so long, and I think we're doing that a little bit with our motorbikes and the things we love. That we're accepting oh yeah, it's got a dodgy throttle and it surges and cuts out and all the rest of it. It's like, yeah, okay, we accept it because these things have gone on for so long, and I just wish that they'd keep upping the regulations and just let it bed in and let us get it right before we carry on. And this is one of the things where I think who's going to want to come into that world now? It's what I said. You going back to the point. You can't. No one's going to want to build a bike like this again, and that's really sad. I think the reason we get into biking is because we want that passion and that excitement and that the individuality of certain motorbikes, and we could be in a position where we might start to lose that, and that's a real shame because of the way that regulations are. We're losing that individuality in bikes, particularly in engines, aren't we? We're not getting that, I don't think anyway, that modern engines are just not, of course they're fast, but they're quite bland. We're losing the character. When you think of like the boxer engines, the Motor Guzzi's and stuff like that, maybe even the Enfield, the 350 Enfields, they're real characterful engines. But there will come a point where you won't be able to produce that engine anymore because you can't meet the restrictions and the controls around it. And that's, I suppose at that point we'll go, well that was the end of that. That was exciting, wasn't it? But that was the end of that. It sounds a bit of a downer, really. But there we are. There was another point that I was thinking though, and this is not connected to this at all. Well, it sort of is, I suppose. Was that Honda, the Honda GB500? And this is a question I'm going to pose to you now, because I know we've been talking before about sales and stuff. Do you think the announcement of the GB500 will curtail the sales of the GB350 just by the mere fact that people think it's coming? That people will go, oh, I'm not going to buy the 350 because I'm going to wait for the 500. And do you think that was actually a poor move by Honda? That people might think, oh, I'm going to wait for the GB500 because I'm not going to buy, say, an Enfield. I'm not going to do this. But don't you think that's really going to stifle the sales of the 350? And I'd be really interested to know whether that was a good move or a bad move. That, you know, that allowing the speculation of that GB to come to Europe when it may be quite some time will stop people buying the 350 in anticipation of it. It just suddenly struck me, you know. I think it was today when I was riding along. It was that struck me, and a wasp, I think, in the head. But I suddenly thought, you know, that's an odd thing, isn't it? That's an odd thing. Was that a good move or a bad move? Because I said at the time that I think there may be a huge wave of 350s coming back on the market secondhand because lots of people have traded them for the 500. And what will that do to the market in that respect? But it's an odd one, isn't it? An odd question that. Do you think that announcing the GB500 before it's even any sort of date, or even if it is going to come to Europe, was a bad move? Because will it affect the sales of the 350, which has done so well? I think you'll probably find that out because the sales where like those 350s, where the GB and the Bantam are doing so well, aren't they? They're sort of fighting amongst each other for top space each month. Whether the GB will now suddenly go below that and stay below that, and the reasoning for that is because people are waiting for the 500. Odd one, isn't it? Interesting question for you to ponder. But there you go. Yeah, I thought I was going past it. I was taking this back, and then I thought, oh, I'll just come and have one. Well, I still got it. I'll just use it as a prop. But it's been lovely having this, and thanks again to Southdown Motorcycles for lending me the bikes. It's been great, and I've really enjoyed using this. Anyway, right. Thanks for watching, and ponder that question and let me know what you think, and other stuff. I have been asked to talk about my gear. I'm sure my gear, I mean in my clothing. I know I am a fashion icon, but yeah, I'll tell you the sort of stuff that I wear and where I get it from. But there you go. Right, take care, ride safe, and I'll see you in the next episode. Look after yourselves.